Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win or you find a way to lose. If your defense is greater than your offense, that's more times than not going to equal to losing fans. But the thing is this, right? Devin Haney, people have a way to feel about him because he's more of a boxer and cool with just getting the victory by any means necessary. And more times than not, he's going to probably go to decision, even though he tries his hardest to get KOs. Andrade is a guy, another one where some people say, hey, look, he's just always been too defensive-minded. Although he can knock you out with the left hand, he was a really good boxer puncher, but still, he wasn't going to necessarily take too many risks. He was just going to fight, depending on the opponent, to not lose, opposed to not winning. Andrade, another one. People say he's the same thing, and Shakur Stevenson, I don't even need to go into that. Everybody right now is really, slamming and lambasting Shakur Stevenson because they're like, this guy, and I think it's a little bit unfair, but they're like, he's just, how Canelo say? Horrible. They say he's a horrible fighter. But this is the thing, right? In boxing, if you're supposed to get hit, if you're supposed to hit people and not be hit, I mean, what do you want these guys to do? You know what I'm saying? And it's easy to punch somebody. It's easy to clinch somebody. It's easy to have a slug out, a shootout in the middle of the ring. That's what seems to get praise, but not the ultimate skill, and probably, I don't know, maybe in my opinion, it's the most difficult thing to do when it comes to boxing is landing your shots and not taking any damage in return. There aren't many boxers who've been able to really generate and master what I would say is a beyond comprehension defense or a brilliant defense. Now, I truly believe having what these guys have, and Andrade is a good example, when you have a great defense, it serves your career very well. And more times than not, I think having a great defense may be better than having the big punch. But if you can have both, then great. Because the less damage you take, the longer you last in the sport. But the bottom line, man, is when it comes to boxing, fans want to see knockdowns. They want to see people getting clipped. But in professional boxing, it's scored by knockdowns. It's also scored by ring generalship, defense as well, punches landed, and then more importantly, who's really being the more effective fighter, and just how effective are your punches, how much damage are you inflicting on your opponent. And when you think about it, that doesn't mean you got to be in there like Ruslan Providnikov or Ricardo Mayorga and shit. Just goddamn, trying to hit a grand slam with every shot. You just need to be, I think, you just need to be more effective. I don't think being more aggressive is what they're looking for. But I think with fans, and even when it comes to judging the fight, they want to see who's the most effective. Good example this past weekend, Shakur Foster fought Conceição. Well, Shakur Foster, to me, had landed the more effective punches. But the fact is, he was outthrown, not outlanded, and the guy wasn't more effective, in my opinion. But he did outthrow him, and that gave the perception that he was being the aggressor and winning the rounds to the judges. So it is what it is. But there are lots of fighters who box on the back foot, and they will kind of punch their way to a victory by allowing, their opponent to be that bulldog, or that I like to say the bull in the china shop, or just the aggressor. And when they're able to use that evasive movement, nullify the aggression, and able to kind of get in and out of range and land their shots, Let me tell you something. That's a thing of beauty. And when you look at these fighters here in front of us, they all have been able to do that. But fans do not appreciate that. They'll recognize that you're getting in and out, you're getting out of range, controlling the distance, you're landing counter shots, you're discouraging your opponent at times. But they see it. I just don't think they really appreciate it. And that's why these guys are so, harshly ridiculed. But being aggressive in boxing, that's not difficult. But being an effective aggressor is incredibly hard, especially when you have, skilled opponents in front of you. If you think about Floyd Mayweather, this man will sit right there in the pocket, deflect your right hand with his shoulder, block body shots with his hand, and then parry your left hook with his right hand. And he's sitting there in this, we call it the shoulder roll or the Philly shell defense. And he does all of that. And that's what I'm talking about. Being effectively aggressive against a skilled opponent. It's hard to do that because I think defense trumps offense, especially when you're dealing with these guys who are these brilliant defensive fighters. And that's why I brought up Floyd Mayweather's name, because I think, at least for this generation, he's probably, I think, would consider him, as far as a defensive fighter, an icon. Took damn near no damage throughout his whole career, 20-year career. And it just really showed the movement and give an example to all the fighters. Hey, the less you get hit, the longer you last. And Floyd Mayweather was a guy who, ever since when he first turned pro, was defensive minded, but he was equally offensive minded, and he was out there destroying people. And that's what I talk about. In the pocket, making you miss, catching, shooting, countering, breaking you down, and standing in the center of the ring doing this shit I'm talking about to elite fighters. Not many people appreciate Floyd the way they should. And when it comes to Shakur Stevenson, Devin Haney, Erislandy Lara, he's all right. But even Demetrius Andrade, none of those guys come anywhere near Floyd Mayweather. And as great as he was, Floyd Mayweather, defensively and offensively, he still lost fans, which to me is just mind-blowing. Now, if Floyd was a guy who stayed in there and fought every fight like he fought Miguel Cotto, I tell you what, these neurological surgeons would probably be sitting here giving us briefings and updates on Floyd Mayweather, who probably by now will be suffering from chronic brain injury because he chose to fight stupid and satisfy fans to let them know that, hey, I got knockout power, I can take a punch. And now that boxing's over, nobody give a shit about you no more. He's there, tongue hanging out his mouth, drooling, and can't even sip soup. But the bottom line is an offensive fighter is just more fun. You know what I'm saying? It's like being on the road. Yeah, it's safe, and you get from point A to point B. You're driving the speed limit. It says 35 miles per hour. You're doing your 35, maybe 34. You get to where you're going, it gets the job done. But when you can get out there and drive 100 miles an hour, it's a bit more fun. Dangerous, high risk, but it can be so rewarding if you can get away with it. But it's not the best option. Now, from a sports perspective, defense, in my opinion, is inevitably more valuable. Now, the offensive style is probably more valuable when you talk about an entertainment perspective. So that's the two arguments: the sports perspective and what's desired, the entertainment perspective and what's desired. Hardcore boxing fans will probably say, you know what? We'll check out technical matches as well as brawls, But at the end of the day, if you have, let's put it to you this way. If Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward, right, when they were going into their trilogy, if that fight was coming on, or I would say, who else out there was a real boxing match? Two guys during that time who were just really, really good boxers, not trying to take. Oh, you got like a Zaire Rahim out there fighting somebody. Half of y'all don't even know who Zaire Rahim is. Ain't nobody tuning in to watch no goddamn Zaire Rahim. Because it goes back to what I'm saying. Fans want to gravitate towards the violence. And Arturo Gatti, Mickey Ward, that is what you call violence. See, they want the fast pace, the action pack. Makes for good entertainment. Two aggressive styles clash, they're going to put on a spectacular show. They're going to stand in front of each other and exchange punches. And matter of fact, I talk about the trilogy between Ward and Gatti. Shit, recently, what do we have? Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. Talk about two guys, offensively minded, put together these strategies to get in there, showing heart. They're trying to destroy each other in an epic brawl. And to this day, people talk about it as probably the best heavyweight trilogy ever. And both of those guys put it all on the line. And they've earned the right to receive that distinction. But look at what happened to their career since. They both beat a pound of flesh out of each other. And this is what sucks. They're still both, Deontay Wilder, I don't know what's going on with him and freaking Maliki, what he did to Deontay Wilder. But the bottom line is, they because they've taken losses, they've lost fans. But nobody wants to appreciate, really the defense. You know what I'm saying? If you're more defensive minded, they're going to hate you. You look at Wilder, he's still trying to be offensive, but he's got a little bit more defense mentality working with Malik Scott, like when he fought Parker. And everybody just totally turned against him. I don't blame Wilder, I blame freaking Maliki. But I also blame Wilder some, but that's just a whole that whole thing with Wilder and Malik Scott and Mark Bill, that whole shit is frustrating. But the bottom line is, you get what I'm saying. You start losing fans when you're not out here being more offensive minded and hurting people and knocking out and just overall bringing violence into the ring. But no matter how offensive you are, depending on who you're fighting and how great they are defensively, you just may not be able to get your offensive strategy off on them. So it is what it is. But we'll see what happens going forward with these guys who are considered boring, and if fans will ever evolve beyond wanting to see a mashup, crash up, wanting to see destruction in the ring. But I think for these guys who are more defensive minded, I think if they make an effort to show more offense, but at the same time using more head movement to evade punches, and in slightly different ways, being able to slip, get underneath shots, then get in and out of range, but then to make sure they put something on the end of that to land their own shots. I think that definitely will help them to regain fans and get people to be more entertained with their fights. Just because you're a defensive fighter doesn't mean that you turn stupid to entertain fans and you stand to sit in the ring and you start to foolishly exchange. No. Hold your ground, make them miss, and make them pay. That's how you regain the fan support. And a good example of that is you're talking about somebody who press forward, slipping punches, creating openings and landing shots. Shit. Like Canelo does that. He's very good at that. Look at what he did to Jacob. Look at what he just did to Munguia. I mean, just slipping punches and making you pay. And when he landed that hard shot on Munguia, the whole fight changed. Then you got to still have your footwork and your rhythm. Not every fighter has good footwork. I tell you what, using smart footwork, some aggressive fighters, they can overwhelm opponents, man, with just changing angles of attack and leaving opponents flustered. But the guy who's defensive minded could use his footwork to get out the way of all that, and then come back and land something vicious and change the fight and possibly stop it. Now, when we talk about footwork in boxing, right now, I don't care how old he is. Goddamn, you got to think about Lomachenko. You know, everybody has some other guys with some good footwork, but that damn Lomachenko, it's a whole nother level of smart footwork. And then punch volume. I mean, look, high punch volume is basically to just confuse your opponent. You throw a lot of punches, they can't even react. They're sitting there just like Jesus Christ. It's just punches coming from all over the place. And when you have fast hands and you can throw in combination like that, I mean, that gives you a huge advantage. And again, offense can be a defense, but you can't run around the ring away from your opponents. You got to learn to have the head movement, the footwork, and the punch volume to be more effective and to get fans to support them. And we talk about punch volume, you got to talk about Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao. I mean, to me, that's just the epitome of the style of someone who's a volume puncher. Absolutely amazing. But anyway, that's my 2 cents on it. Right now, the climate, if your defense inside that ring is greater than your offense, that's going to result in you losing fans. And there are things they can do to help regain the fan support, but it's kind of like where we're at, right? Keep cool, I'm in the breeze.